Have you ever loved someone who felt like home, but burned like fire? They walked into your life like a breath of fresh air, soft words, sweet promises, eyes that seemed to see into the hidden corners of your soul. And for a moment, you believed. You believed you'd finally found someone who didn't just understand your scars, but would never add more to them. But slowly, almost unnoticeably, that warmth turned cold. The comfort began to suffocate. The peace you once felt started to unravel, thread by invisible thread. You began questioning yourself, not just your decisions, but your worth. And yet, you stayed. You stayed because you remembered the beginning. You stayed because you thought love meant enduring. You stayed because you told yourself, maybe they'll change. Maybe I just need to love harder. But let me ask you, what if staying isn't strength? What if loving someone who chips away at your spirit is not love at all, but a form of quiet self-betrayal? See, we're not here today to judge your love. We're here to honor your clarity. Because recognizing that you're in love with the wrong person isn't failure, it's awakening. It's choosing truth over illusion. It's what Marcus Aurelius would have called the discipline of perception, seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Today's video isn't about heartbreak. It's about healing. It's about the 4 quiet signs that whisper before the storm, the signs that you're loving someone who doesn't nurture your soul, but quietly unravels it. Because true love, real, grounded, soul-affirming love, never asks you to lose yourself. It doesn't breed confusion. It doesn't ignite fear. It cultivates peace, presence, power. So if your heart has been heavy, if you've been holding on and quietly wondering if it's time to let go, this is for you. And if this message finds you at just the right moment, I ask you gently, like someone who's walked this road, consider subscribing to Stoic now. Because sometimes, what we need most isn't advice, but language for the truth we've already felt. Let's begin this journey inward, with quiet courage and eyes wide open. Number 1. They diminish your self-worth subtly and often. It doesn't always begin with shouting or slamming doors. In fact, the most dangerous unraveling often begins in silence, with a subtle sigh, a dismissive glance, a compliment that carries the weight of a stone hidden in silk. They didn't mean it that way, you tell yourself. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But the truth is simpler than you think. You are not too sensitive. You're waking up. When you're in love with the wrong person, one of the earliest signs isn't explosive drama, it's the quiet diminishment of who you are. A slow bleed, a steady erosion. It's the way your wins start to feel like losses. The way you start second-guessing your instincts. The way you begin to shrink, just to avoid another emotional bruise. I knew a man once, let's call him Sam. Gentle, thoughtful, with a kind of quiet genius that never demanded attention but always earned respect. When he met her, she seemed magnetic, funny, driven, always the brightest in the room. At first, her teasing seemed playful. Her critiques? Just trying to help. But months passed, and Sam stopped playing guitar. He used to light up when he talked about his music. Now, he flinched when someone brought it up. She says it's just a hobby, he once told me, eyes low. Says real men don't waste time strumming like teenagers. And that's how it begins. Not with hatred, but with subtle corrosion. A backhanded compliment here, a raised eyebrow there. Suddenly, you feel like you need to defend your joy. Like your very existence requires permission. This is the first red flag, and one of the most invisible. When someone loves you right, they don't shrink you to feel bigger. They don't poke holes in your dreams or dim your light to feel more radiant by contrast. Love, real, rooted, unwavering love, celebrates your essence. It fans the flame of who you are, not stifles it with wet cloth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But let's take that deeper. The soul becomes dyed by the energy it's bathed in, too. Spend enough time with someone who questions your worth, and you begin to question it yourself. Not because it's true, but because repetition, over time, becomes belief. This is the psychological trap. Experts call it gaslighting by erosion. It's not that one comment breaks you. It's that hundreds of tiny slights, over time, condition you to doubt your own reality. You stop trusting your gut. You second-guess your memory. You begin to depend on their version of you, twisted, distorted, always lacking, because you no longer recognize the original. And worst of all, you still think it's love. You still hold on to the memory of how they made you feel in the beginning, the adoration, the admiration. You remember how they once lifted you so high that the fall now feels like your fault. But hear this, love that lifts and love that lacerates are not the same. Affection is not the antidote to abuse. Charm is not a substitute for character. You know you're in love with the wrong person when you feel more ashamed around them than you do inspired. When their praise comes with conditions. when their approval must be earned through silence, compliance, and smaller versions of yourself. This is not love. It's quiet manipulation dressed as connection. And it's time to look deeper, not just at them, but at yourself. Why do we allow ourselves to stay? Sometimes, it's because we mistake familiarity for safety. If you grew up never quite feeling enough, then someone who subtly confirms that might not feel abusive, they might feel like home. Your nervous system mistakes the ache for affection. It craves what it recognizes, even if what it recognizes is the very thing that broke you before. But that's where the Stoic path offers clarity. Epictetus wrote, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." That's the work here. To remember, to strip away the distorted reflections someone else has cast upon your soul, and to return to the truth of your worth, not the version they approved of, but the essence that existed before they arrived. Ask yourself, who were you before they started shaping your identity? What passions did you pursue? What beliefs did you hold? What laughter did you release without fear? And then ask, why have those things grown quiet? The right person will not make you disappear to keep the peace. They will never resent your growth, your boldness, or your full expression. They will not confuse control with commitment. You know you're in love with the wrong person when you begin to fear your own fullness. When the cost of joy is too high. When peace is replaced by a constant need for permission. So take inventory, not just of their words, but of how you feel when you're around them. Do you feel free or filtered? Do you feel supported or scrutinized? Do you feel more you or less? Because the truth is, someone who truly loves you will never use love as leverage. They will never make your worth conditional. They will never need to reduce your shine to feel whole. And if you are slowly vanishing under the weight of their expectations, if you find yourself muting your voice, your joy, your dreams, know this, you are not too much. You are simply loving someone too small to carry the expanse of who you are. You are not meant to be edited down for someone else's comfort. You are meant to be witnessed as you are unfolding, evolving, radiant. So let this be your moment of clarity, not one of blame, but of vision. Because when someone repeatedly makes you feel small, that's not just unkind, it's unworthy of your continued presence. And the moment you remember that is the moment you begin to rise. Number 2, you feel more anxious than at peace. There's a kind of silence that soothes the soul. And then, there's the kind that stabs it. If you've ever sat next to someone you love and felt your chest tighten, your words tangle, your smile hesitate, then you already know what I mean. Love is not supposed to feel like tension in your bones or knots in your stomach. It's not meant to feel like walking through a field of landmines with your heart strapped to your sleeve. But here's the truth few are willing to say out loud. Sometimes the person we love most is the one who makes us feel least safe inside our own skin. And no, it's not always because they scream or hit or hurl words like weapons. Sometimes, it's the unpredictability. The way their mood changes like weather. The way you never know if your joy will annoy them today or be ignored completely. So you start editing yourself. You watch your tone. You soften your truths. You shrink your laughter. You delay your needs. You stop being real and start being careful. And in that carefulness, something beautiful begins to die. When love brings more anxiety than ease, more fear than freedom, it's time to pause. Because that isn't love, it's emotional captivity dressed as connection. And no amount of history or hope can make peace out of a battlefield. A Stoic would ask you this: does this love align with virtue, or does it erode your clarity? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside of it. Realize this, and you will find strength." But what happens when your mind no longer feels like your own? When love becomes a constant state of alert, waiting for the next jab, the next withdrawal, the next unpredictable shift, your nervous system is no longer in rest. It is in fight, flight, or freeze. And that chronic tension, that emotional bracing, becomes your new normal. I once spoke with a woman named Elise. Fierce, brilliant, wildly creative. But when she talked about her boyfriend, she sounded like someone walking through fog. When he's good, he's perfect, she told me. But sometimes, he disappears. Not physically, emotionally. It's like I say one wrong word and he goes cold. I asked her how that made her feel. Her answer haunts me still. Tired. Like I'm always trying not to ruin everything. And that's what anxiety and love does. It makes you responsible for someone else's chaos. It makes you the emotional caretaker for their unprocessed pain. It convinces you that if you just love better, softer, quieter, they'll finally stop hurting you. But you cannot build safety on the shifting sands of another's instability. You cannot create peace in a house where silence is punishment and affection is a reward. And you cannot thrive in a love that keeps you on edge, waiting for the next moment of disconnection. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." But freedom isn't just about walking away. It's about waking up. It's about realizing that peace is not a luxury. It is a prerequisite for love. And if your love makes you anxious more often than it makes you grounded, then you are not in love. You are in emotional survival mode. Here's what happens when that becomes your normal. You stop trusting your gut because your instincts are constantly overridden by someone else's moods. You stop expressing your truth because honesty becomes dangerous. You start rewarding bad behavior just to keep the peace. And eventually, you begin to confuse adrenaline for affection, chaos for chemistry, nervousness for passion. This is not love. This is emotional addiction. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. It's the same method casinos use to hook gamblers. The unpredictability of the reward creates an obsessive focus on getting back to that one magical moment of connection. But that magic was a trick, a flash of light designed to keep you pulling the lever. In love, it looks like this. They hurt you. Then they hold you. They disappear. Then they beg to stay. They freeze you out. Then come back warmer than ever. And each time, you think, this is the real them. We're back. But you're not. You're just inside the cycle again. And that cycle isn't romantic. It's psychological warfare. So what do? You return to yourself. You ask the hard question, do I feel safe with this person? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And then you ask, when I sit next to them in silence, do I breathe deeper or shallower? Because love that is right for your soul will never require you to hide parts of it. Love that is true will make your nervous system exhale, not tighten. It will not feel like tiptoeing around broken glass. It will feel like coming home to yourself. And no, this doesn't mean that every love must be effortless. All human connection carries challenges. But the difference is this: in the right relationship, those challenges grow you. They don't wound you. They build bridges. They don't blow them up. The right love is not a high you chase. It's a stillness you return to. So if you've been feeling more anxious than at peace, if your body tenses when you hear their footsteps, if you've started narrating their moods like a weather forecast, then maybe it's not your love that's the problem. Maybe it's your belief that love must hurt to be real. That's the lie you've outgrown. And this is your moment to remember, you are not too much. You are not too needy. You are not too sensitive. You are a human being who deserves to breathe, to speak, to rest, to feel safe in the arms of the person you love, not braced for their next emotional storm. And if they cannot offer you that peace, you are allowed to choose your own. Number 3, you've lost yourself. There's a particular kind of grief that doesn't come from death, but from slow disappearance. Not of a person, but of yourself. You don't notice it at first. It's subtle, almost innocent. You stop going to that coffee shop you loved because they never liked the vibe. You change your playlist in the car because your music feels too much. You start using their words, their humor, their moods. You adjust. You adapt. You assimilate. And somewhere along the way, you vanish. This is one of the clearest signs you're in love with the wrong person. Not the fights, not the drama, but the quiet forfeiting of your identity just to keep the peace. You don't recognize your reflection anymore, not just in the mirror, but in your behavior, your dreams, your voice. You're still alive, yes, but you're not truly you. I once had a friend, Eric, an artist in every sense. His sketches used to breathe life, edges full of soul, color that whispered stories. Then he fell in love. She was sharp, beautiful, magnetic, but indifferent to his craft. It's cute, she once told him, flipping through his sketchbook like it was a restaurant menu. But maybe you should focus on something more productive. He laughed it off. She just doesn't get it, he told me. 6 months later, his easel was covered in dust. 1 year later, his sketchbooks were boxed away in a closet. Life gets busy, he'd say. But the truth was written in his eyes. He'd lost something sacred. Not just the art, but the part of himself that used to feel alive. And that's what unhealthy love does. It doesn't take your life. It takes your aliveness. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But how do you master yourself when you've given away the blueprint just to stay in someone's good graces? When we're deeply in love, especially with the wrong person, we often mistake shape-shifting for devotion. We bend, we mold, we soften our edges to fit the outline of someone else's ideal. And at first, it feels like compromise, like love. But slowly, that compromise becomes conformity. And what once felt like sacrifice becomes self-erasure. Your laughter grows quieter. Your boundaries grow blurry. Your days start revolving around their needs, their moods, their validation. And the worst part? You call it love. But love, true, grounded, liberating love, doesn't require the death of your essence. It doesn't demand that you shelve your joy, your passion, your voice. It doesn't ask you to shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Let's extend that. Waste no more time asking whether this relationship is good for you. Feel it. Does it nourish your soul, or does it drain it? Does it help you grow, or does it make you forget who you were meant to become? If you find yourself looking back on your life before this love, and you miss that version of you, then perhaps the love you're in is not a home, but a disguise. Because the wrong relationship doesn't just distort your present, it rewrites your entire self-concept. You begin to ask for less, not because you need less, but because you've been trained to believe your needs are too much. You stop dreaming big, not because your dreams changed, but because you learned that dreaming too loudly invites criticism. You stop speaking your truth, not because you're unsure of it, but because every past attempt was met with silence, sarcasm, or shame. And slowly, you fade. But here's the sacred truth. You are not meant to be lost inside someone else's life. You are not designed to be the background character in your own story. You are not here to exist only as an extension of someone else's desires. You were made to be whole, to be vast, to be vibrant, to be free. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And sometimes, the greatest lesson is this: if a love costs you your identity, it's too expensive. So ask yourself, honestly, without flinching, who were you before this relationship? What did you love? What did you create? What did you laugh at until your stomach hurt? What filled you with quiet fire and sacred stillness? And where did that version of you go? Maybe they've been waiting, not for the relationship to improve, but for you to remember. Because healing isn't always about fixing what's broken. Sometimes, it's about reclaiming what was forgotten. And reclaiming yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you seen again. It makes you whole. It makes you powerful, not because you fought to win someone back, but because you stopped abandoning yourself to be loved. So let this be your turning point. Not a breakup with the person you're with, unless that's what's needed, but a reunion with the person you left behind. Start small. Go back to that bookstore you loved. Pick up the guitar. Laugh too loud. Write the poem. Wear the outfit. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Because in doing so, you don't just reclaim your identity. You reclaim your home, the one that lives within. And if the person you love cannot love that version of you, then maybe they were never in love with you to begin with, just the version you created to survive. But you were never made to survive love. You were made to bloom in it. Number 4, you keep hoping they'll become who they were in the beginning. You remember the beginning, the late night talks that felt like shared lifetimes. The way they looked at you like you were the only person in the world. The warmth of their words, the rhythm of their laughter, the small details they noticed and praised, like the way your smile rose just before you laughed, or how you always reached for your coffee with your left hand first. In those moments, you felt seen, not just loved, but understood. And it's that version of them you keep chasing, clutching, longing for. Even now, after the words turn colder, the glances less frequent, the days longer with silence and shorter on affection, you still find yourself wondering, where did they go? But the harder truth, the one most hearts avoid, is this. Maybe they didn't change. Maybe the person you fell in love with was never truly real. Or more painfully, maybe that version of them existed only to lure you in. This is the danger of intermittent affection, what psychology calls love bombing. It's the grand gestures, the flood of attention, the deep emotional bonding that happens early in relationships. It feels euphoric, like you finally found your soulmate. But over time, the warmth fades. The effort disappears, and you're left with someone cold, distracted, distant. And still, you wait. You wait because you're convinced the real them is just hiding behind stress, or time, or temporary mood swings. You wait because you believe you glimpsed something sacred, and you can't let go until you see it again. But what if that beginning wasn't the truth, but the bait? Marcus Aurelius warned us, do not be deceived by appearances. The Stoics knew that not all that shines is solid. Not all that dazzles is durable. In love, the beginning is rarely the full truth. It's a highlight reel, an audition. And if you keep clinging to who they were, you'll miss the reality of who they are and how they make you feel now. This is the emotional trap. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with our idea of them. And when reality fails to live up to that vision, we don't let go, we double down. We try harder, love more, give more, sacrifice more. but no amount of your effort can resurrect a version of someone that only existed in potential. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And the greatest freedom in love is accepting that you cannot control who someone chooses to be. You can't love someone into maturity. You can't hold them together while losing yourself. You can't carry both your healing and their refusal to grow. And most of all, you can't stay just because their ghost still visits you in memories. I knew someone who did. Her name was Callie. Strong, compassionate, beautifully stubborn. She met a man who made her feel like fire in the beginning, radiant, unstoppable. He left her flowers, handwritten letters, whispered plans for a future they barely started living. But 6 months in, the silence started. Texts went unanswered. Promises were postponed. Her joy started to feel like a burden to him. But instead of walking away, she dug deeper. He's just overwhelmed, she said. He used to be so thoughtful. Used to be. That's when love becomes memory and memory becomes the prison. She stayed another year, always hoping, always remembering, always shrinking, until one day she found one of his old letters tucked in a drawer. She read it and cried, not because it was beautiful, but because she no longer recognized the person who wrote it. Not in him, not in herself. That's when she left, because she realized the love she missed wasn't from him. It was from who she used to be when she believed in who he could be. That's what makes this sign so quietly destructive. You don't just lose your peace, you lose your timeline. You live in emotional limbo, trying to time travel back to a moment that no longer exists. You confuse hope with reality. You mistake inconsistency for mystery. You tell yourself it's your fault for changing, when in truth, you've simply awakened. And the truth is, people don't hide who they are for long. Eventually, their true self rises to the surface. And your suffering comes not from who they are, but from your refusal to believe them. So ask yourself, are you in love with them now, or with who they were then? Are you in love with the relationship, or the memory? Do you ache from what they've done, or from what they no longer do? Because if you are staying in a relationship just to resurrect a past that's gone, then it's not love you're in, it's nostalgia. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And when it comes to love, the greatest waste of all is waiting for someone to become again who they were for only a moment. That version of them, the one you first met, was easy to love. That's what makes this so cruel. You fell for their light, but now you live in their shadow, and no amount of longing will bring the light back if they've decided to leave it behind. So here's your invitation, not to let go of love, but to let go of the illusion. Let go of the story you wrote in your head. Let go of the timeline you were trying to follow. Let go of the belief that love must suffer to be real. Because the right love doesn't tease you with its former self. It shows up, today, tomorrow, consistently. It doesn't vanish after the chase. It stays. And if the person you love is no longer that person, then maybe it's time you stop waiting for them to return and start returning to yourself. Because love should not feel like chasing a ghost through the ruins of what used to be. Love, when it's true, walks beside you in the present. And if it doesn't, you're allowed to walk on without it. The courage to return to yourself. So now you've seen it, the quiet truths we often ignore until our hearts grow too tired to carry the weight. They diminish your self-worth, so subtly you almost forget who you are. They stir anxiety in your bones until love feels like walking a tightrope in your own home. They blur your identity until your passions, voice, and spirit begin to fade into silence. And perhaps most painfully, you keep hoping they'll return to who they once were, when maybe they never truly were that person at all. And now here you are, sitting with that truth. Maybe you've recognized one of these signs. Maybe you've seen all four, and finally understand why your soul feels so heavy. Let me tell you this softly, but firmly. You are not weak for loving the wrong person. You are brave for seeing it now. That clarity, though painful, is a gift. It means your spirit still knows how to listen. It means your inner compass is still alive, still turning towards something truer. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But let's take that further. If it is not love, do not stay in it. You deserve a love that holds space for your entire being, not just the parts that make someone else comfortable. You deserve peace that doesn't require performance. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for who you become when you're trying to be enough. So now, ask yourself this, not with guilt or shame, but with quiet honesty. Do I feel safe? Do I feel seen? Do I feel myself when I'm with them? And if not, maybe it's not love that needs to change. Maybe it's your definition of what you're willing to accept in the name of it. The Stoics taught us not to control others, but to govern ourselves. And when it comes to love, that means setting boundaries not to keep people out, but to keep yourself whole. Maybe today is the beginning of a deeper kind of freedom, the kind that comes not from walking away in anger, but from walking toward your own peace. So if this video stirred something in you, I invite you, gently, to sit with it. Not to react quickly, not to rush change, but to feel what's true, to journal, to reflect, to reclaim whatever pieces of yourself have been left behind. And if you feel safe here, if this message offered clarity, or comfort, or courage, subscribe to Stoic now. Not just for more videos, but for more reminders that you are not alone in this quiet fight to live with emotional integrity. Leave a comment below if it feels right. Share your story, or simply write, "I'm returning to myself." You never know who might read it and feel just a little less alone. Remember, every small act of honesty is a rebellion against the life you no longer wish to live. Every moment of clarity is a doorway, and sometimes, the most profound kind of love is the one you show yourself when you finally choose peace over pretending. So take a deep breath. You are not lost. You are returning, and you're right on time.